stepping away from all the trade talk for now and just to appreciate Miami Heat basketball, as we know you all do. In today's episode, we look at some of the biggest storylines to follow next season, the lineups we're most excited about, and how the Heat might tweak their style of play as they make a push for the NBA championship. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Friday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening or watching on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. We've broken down the possibility of a major trade almost every episode for the last few weeks. And while it's always interesting to break down some of the possibilities, we're going to be taking a break from that line of conversation. For one, we're going into our off-season schedule. So just a programming note, we're cutting down to just 3 episodes a week throughout August. Of course, if any major moves happen, we'll report on those just as we always do. And of course, we'll also have our 2006 Finals NBA rewatch. We will get into that a little bit later in today's show, but if you haven't heard, it's an exciting project that we're looking into with major interviews and so much more. We'll be breaking down every game from the 2006 NBA Finals, but it's time to step away from the trade machine and the salary cap and roster construction and just look at basketball. Just appreciate the game of hoop, and specifically Heat basketball. We'll talk about the lineups that we want to see the most, general storylines that we're most excited about. But we'll start off this segment with a big question that I think a lot of Heat fans are thinking about, is that they got so close to the NBA Finals, et cetera. Now they've made some roster moves. They've lost a key player in PJ Tucker. There's probably going to be changes in the starting lineup outside of Tucker. So what can we expect from Miami's style of play, and how will it change next season? I think that's an interesting question to look into for this particular segment. Wes, what do you think?
Well, let's start with the loss of PJ Tucker, because he was so important to Miami's style of play last year. We could talk about what he did defensively, how much they were able to switch 1 through 5 because PJ Tucker was at the 4 spot. And
just a note, I saw a comment from one of our YouTube watchers. First of all, thank you to everybody who watches on YouTube. Somebody pointing out, as we talked about the power forward discussion, well, PJ was only 6'5". That dude guarded everybody. He guarded centers, whether they were 7 feet tall or not. So yes,
he was 6'5" wide also.
Yeah, he was 6'5" and capable of guarding centers. He changed the dynamic of defense, which is why he was so important. But anyway, please continue.
He's a very unique kind of player. And if you think that anybody that's 6'5", such as Caleb Martin, can come in and just do PJ Tucker's job, then you're going to be in for a surprise when the season starts and Caleb Martin is not able to do what Caleb Martin can do other things. He just can't do what PJ Tucker did.
Right.
And so because of that, I do think that the style of play is going to have to change quite a bit. Specifically, I don't know that there is a replacing PJ Tucker right now defensively. I don't know that you can be as good defensively as you were last year without PJ Tucker. I think this team could still be good, but I don't think this team will be elite defensively the way they were last season. And so instead of trying to make it up on the defensive end, I actually see this team trying to make it up on offense. Get the ball in the hoop a little bit more, play with a faster pace, maybe get more threes up and things like that. And look, if you're able to get the ball in the hoop a little bit more often, then defensively it becomes a little bit easier. But to answer the question, the way that I think the style of play will change is I think the 3-point attempts per game will go up. They averaged 34, 35 a game last year. I think we'll see that get up into like the 37, 38 range, which would be like in the top 10 of teams last year. I think the pace is going to go up for sure. They were the third slowest team in the league last season. I could see them getting closer to league average. I don't think they're going to be playing bonkers bananas style fast, but I think they'll get to league average, which is a big change from what it would be last year. And then lastly, I think they're just going to get back into some of the dribble handoffs and things like that. They did it a lot last year, but they weren't number 1 in the league. I think they'll be number 1 in the league again this coming season, because without PJ being that brick wall screener that he was last year, and he was so useful in Miami's offense last year. He set so many screens for them last year. Again, Caleb Martin's not doing that. He's got a different style of play. I think the onus is going to fall on Bam quite a bit. And if you have Bam involved in even more screens than he has been in the past, then that just unlocks the dribble handoff action that we know he's so good at. So that's how I think things will change. I think we're just going to see a more free-flowing, faster style of play on offense.
I think it's something that we've been talking about quite a bit, looking at the potential lineup changes, specifically the insertion of Tyler Herro, the likely insertion of Tyler Herro into the starting lineup. With him as your bucket getter, your go-to scorer, there are so many different things that you can do offensively. And look, I think a lot of how Miami runs their offense will fall on how available Kyle Lowry is. And we've talked about this before. Lowry last season, when he was available, when he was healthy, was such a dynamic playmaker in offense, always looking ahead, always pushing the pace, always getting the ball up court quickly, just getting into their half court sets as quickly as possible. From there, now you've got your designated bucket getter in Tyler that you can go through, but you can also run those screen actions that we've been talking about, inverted screen actions with Jimmy setting screens. I'd like to see a lot of that where he can roll the hoop because he is so good. I think that would put maybe a little bit too much wear and tear on him, something that is going to be a concern if he's going to be playing more up the floor. Like if he has to defend bigger players, then you don't necessarily want him to grind through so much on defense and then on offense as well. It's something to consider.
I have a Jimmy point on that later on.
Okay.
But just let's keep that in mind for later.
No, yeah, it's absolutely interesting. Now, one of the things that I'm concerned about is that, yes, I totally agree with you. Again, like I said, I talked about it before. I think the fast-paced up-tempo offense works better for the changes that they're looking at next season. Having said that, the biggest issue with that is Jimmy. Jimmy is inherently a slower walk-it-up type of player. He just does not push the pace the same way Kyle does. And I think it's almost like there's this conflicting just attack mode. They do
I don't
things
think
a little
Kyle
bit differently.
plays like that all the time. I actually think that that's a little bit of a misnomer
Conception,
with Kyle, is that he does like the hit ahead passes, and when he does push the pace, it's very loud. It's very, you could see it. It's very noticeable. But more often than not, he's sort of just walking it up with Jimmy too, and he was that way in Toronto as well. I just think he's more opportunistic than just he's less. He's more picking his spots, and he's less LaMelo Ball, just running and gunning the entire time. And so with
too.
But I do think that Jimmy and Lowry will have to kind of get on board with the faster pace. And look, every team in training camp says, we want to play faster, we want to up the pace a little bit, and then the regular season comes around and then they don't. And I could totally, and Miami did that last year too, by the way, and they didn't. And maybe it is just a matter of them being more opportunistic more often, as opposed to just pushing the pace all the time. But again, I'll say this. I don't think they're going to be top of the league. I don't think they'll be top 5. I don't think they'll be top 10 in pace. I just think that I don't know that they can afford, I'll put it that way. I don't know that they can afford to be that slow in pace if defensively you're not going to be elite. I think that you do need to get closer to league average, which is still not super fast. It's very doable.
Now, can Tyler play quickly? I think that's a good question. Can he? I mean, do you think he's capable of being, again, he has to go through so many different actions in order to get his shot. He kind of slows it down. He's constantly, probing and penetrating with his dribble, and then, pulling up in, odd moments during the play of a game there where he just kind of finds his shot. And yes, he's very, very good at that for the most part, but it kind of slows the pace down a little bit. Can he play a little bit more quickly and just get to his shots a little bit more, or is he going to constantly rely on what he has to get to this point to be able to make up for his overall lack of athleticism? I think that's a big question for this team.
Yeah, look, I think it'll more be him as a playmaker that benefits the pace a little bit. If you're able to run more screen and roll action with Bam, and you're just getting it to Bam on a lob, more often than you had last year, especially between Kyle Lowry and Bam Adebayo, and especially Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo, then that increases the pace, because now you're not talking about a probing style of offense. You're just, high screen and roll, come off, either shoot the 3 or hit Bam on the lob. If you do that a little bit more, then I do think you can increase the pace. That's probably going to be, a big part of the offense in a way that maybe even wasn't last year. Tyler Herro last year, I got some numbers. As a pick and roll ball handler, he ran 6.9 pick and rolls per game last season. That was way up from the 2 years prior. His second year, he ran 4.7 pick and rolls a game, and his first year, he ran 4.2 per game. From an efficiency standpoint, he dipped a little bit from his second year with the volume increasing. And so maybe that means that he plateaued a little bit as a pick and roll ball handler, but we also know that he's working on it, that he's not a natural sort of playmaker. He's not a natural passer at his position. So I don't read that as a plateauing. I read that as, he's comfortable enough to increase the volume, and I think the efficiency will come along with it. And if you create more opportunities for him to just throw the lob up to Bam, that's going to help the efficiency. That's going to help the points per possession. So I think that's going to be a big part of the offense too, is Tyler Herro running just more pick and roll stuff, possibly with Bam. And if you do that, then we could see the pace go up a little bit.
I'd like to see something different with the way that Tyler is used. And I know you don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel or anything like that, but like a big concern for me as far as where Tyler can continue to improve is his ability to get to the free throw line. And I don't know how you do it. I don't know if you try and put him in some kind of post-up situation or something, because he's just so undersized, really. Well, I mean, underweight, let's say, not undersized necessarily. But he just needs to be able to initiate contact in different ways, more frequently, certainly. Because that's just been a problem for him, is that he just historically has not been able to get to the line very frequently. And I think if he's going to be your starting two guard, we saw this with Oladipo. For all of his problems offensively in those few games that he played during the playoffs, he was able to draw fouls pretty consistently against Boston, against Philadelphia, et cetera. He made the most of those opportunities. Maybe there's just a little savvy. Maybe it's just the way he attacks the basket. He's going to get the call. Tyler, more often than not, will pull up for that jumper when he sees that there's a little space between him and the defender. Instead, he needs to be able to finish through, get to the rim, and get to the line and get those calls. And I think he will at this point in time. I think he's established his name a little bit more now and is entering his fourth season. He's the sixth man of the year. He's a proven commodity. I think he'll get that friendlier whistle as he starts entering this next phase of his career.
Yeah, it's possible. And that also part of that will have to come with, taking fewer mid-range shots, which I understand why he did it last year. He was a good mid-range shooter, but if he sort of goes in a more efficient direction on offense where it's mostly threes and getting to the rim more, and by the way, if you're taking more threes, that space by the basket should open up a little bit, then you might see him get to the free throw line a little bit more. I understand why we want it. But it kind of goes hand in hand with the things that the issues that he has defensively, is that he's just physically not very big, and he's only 22 years old. And I kind of liken his body type to a Steph Curry, where it just took they're like late bloomers physically. And now you look at Steph, he's 31, 32 years old, and he's ripped. Like, the dude's jacked, and he's getting to the free throw line more than he ever has. And I think we might have to wait that long for Tyler to really kind of fortify that part of his game as well. It's just, he's a late bloomer physically. And
he doesn't sell contact much either, though. That's another part of it too. It's like I think a lot of Heat fans would agree they don't necessarily want to see the next reincarnation of James Harden. They don't want to see that kind of egregious baiting for that. But at the same time, it's just a necessity. Like,
but part of selling the contact is actually drawing some contact. You're not selling the contact when there's no contact. You're selling the contact when there's like a little bit of contact. Wow. And Tyler hasn't even gotten to the point where he's drawing a little bit of contact, right?
That's
and
fair.
So
he pulls up,
right, exactly. So I baby steps, I guess, but it is something that is on the docket for Tyler Herro. When the front office has his exit interview, they say, okay, these are the things we need you to work on. Also, continue to build some muscle mass and get to the free throw line a little bit more. It's on the docket. I just don't know that it's something that we can rush or expect this next season.
Yeah. We'll talk about some of the other storylines worth watching next season, as well as some of the things that we can look forward to from particular lineups that they might roll out from time to time. But before we do that, just a reminder that you should be BetOnline.net, because they are the fastest and easiest way to check on all your betting needs. You can find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, training camp opening up around the NFL. Any thoughts so far on Dolphins training camp? I know you've been following it closely.
Yeah, just excited to see more Tyreek Hill. He looks good, apparently.
All right. Wow. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They've got you covered. Head up to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. And just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com, or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. All right, Wes, here's a little bit more open-ended of a conversation here, but I think a particularly fun one because as we're looking at Miami's chances next season, whether they're a play-in tournament team or the number one seed or everywhere in between, it doesn't really matter. There's stories to mine out of this particular group, just as there are every year. And I think this is a fun way of looking at it. What are some of the things about next year's team that you're most excited of seeing play?
I'm just following the Tyler Herro thing, honestly, just sort of build off of what we were just talking about. You and I both anticipate that he's going to be the starter next year, and that's Absolutely. A big difference from his role last year. He was sixth man of the year. He said after the season, during his end-of-season interviews with the media, that he believes he deserves to be a starter. He's going into his fourth season. He's obviously maxed out the position that he's already in as sixth man. He won the award for being the best at it in the NBA. So at some point, when do you get your promotion? And I do think that he's in line for a promotion to the starting lineup, and he has earned it. I really do. I believe him. And I think that's also going to unlock Miami's offense in a way that maybe it wouldn't have unlocked in the same way if you had acquired a Kevin Durant or something like that. But given that this is probably what the Heat are dealing with, and this is the roster, at least for now, Tyler Herro is Miami's best option to basically fix the problems that kept them from getting to the NBA Finals last year, specifically in the half-court offense. And one of the things I'm looking at is I really like the idea of Tyler Herro starting. I know that the defensive concerns are there and that Eric Spoelstra has leaned away from Tyler Herro because of those defensive issues. But you could also make the argument, and we have before, that his defensive issues are mitigated a little bit by being in a lineup with Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. And so if you have those three guys bracketing Tyler Herro in that starting unit, it frees up Tyler to be the answer on offense that we're talking about that they need, right? If you're not going to be elite defensively, then you need to be a little bit better offensively than you were last season. And so I want to see, I'm just following the Tyler Herro storyline. I wrote the thing for the Miami Herald last season about how he took that leap from year 2 to year 3 and ended up being sixth man of the year. I'm really interested to see what he looks like going in from year 3 to year 4 and what kind of leap he takes next season.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on all those counts. The Tyler, like, it's the make it or break it pivot point for Miami's season. It's like if he takes that leap, if he takes just the incremental growth that Zach Lowe just wrote about recently for ESPN, if he continues to build, and I mean, we've all kind of, not all, but I think a lot of people in Heat fandom have kind of just hung on the fact that he wasn't particularly good in year 2 because he reached such great heights in year 1. And again, I think that's a little unfair because he did make some improvement there. He was given a lot more opportunity. He was thrust into the starting lineup alongside Goran Dragic. That didn't work. There was a lot of challenges for him there. I just don't think it was the right role for him. Having said all that, now in the year 3, we saw him play significantly better. He struggled in the playoffs. Even today, like, you get a lot of comments from some people. It's like, I don't even know why you're following this team. Like to hate watch Tyler Herro, that we hold his hand, that we make excuses.
That's such a minority of the fans. It really is.
Agree,
you go to a Heat game and they go bonkers when Tyler Herro comes in. Most people love Tyler Herro, and most people that I've talked to, like IRL in real life, for people who don't know what that means, they didn't even want to trade Tyler Herro for Kevin Durant. They love Tyler Herro. People really like Tyler Herro, and so. I don't care about
pushing it a little bit. That's a little bit of
a lot of people felt that way. I'm just saying, like, people that live in the real world. Not saying that they're
talking about Tyler.
Not saying they're
talking about Tyler's family. Do you talk about Tyler's family? Is that what you're talking about? Are these the people?
I talked to his little brother. He wasn't a fan of it. He wants to stay in Miami. All
right.
Not really. The other part of this too with Tyler Herro is, and you mentioned the Zach Lowe piece, and I thought he pointed out something really interesting. Is and I know I just got done talking about how I think that Tyler Herro will continue to take another step in his pick and roll ball handling and all this stuff. But Lowe actually brought up the point that maybe not, like, just don't and focus more on the catch and shoot stuff, because you look at his numbers, 3-point shooting stuff in general, really, his numbers are elite, like in the same realm as the Curry brothers, elite, like catch and shoot his catch and shoot numbers last year, 42.2% on 3.2 catch and shoot 3-point attempts per game. Again, that's Steph Curry, Klay Thompson level stuff. His pull-up shooting, 37.5% on 3.4 3-point attempts per game. Again, Steph Curry level pull-up shooting. So when you're able to just manufacture your own threes, like, the catch and shoot stuff is in the flow of the offense, right? And he's obviously really great at that. But that pull-up stuff, when we're talking about that high screen and roll action with Bam Adebayo, getting more of that with Tyler as a starter next to Bam, where Bam is setting those brick wall screens and Tyler's just flaring off of them and pulling up into a three-pointer. He's already amazing at that, having done it as a backup. So I would love to just see Tyler Herro expand his game from specifically from three-point range. Take 8 threes a game. Take 9 threes a game. He's good enough. He's elite at that skill. He should be taking that amount.
I agree 100%. Glad you brought up Bam, because to me, that's one of the things I'm most excited about watching is Bam's evolution next season. And I think that we're going to be watching that in real time. Look, I've mentioned it before. I think if he had just played 10 more games last year, I think he would have run away with the Defensive Player of the Year award. I really do believe that enough people from a national perspective had seen his incredible ability to guard 1 through 5, et cetera, that we're talking about, again, another perennial Defensive Player of the Year award candidate, or whatever you want to call it. Like he is that good every season, and he has been since he started getting regular playing time for the last couple of seasons. And I think now he's already made that his goal. He's already talked about that publicly during the offseason, and I think he's going to be able to achieve that. And we're kind of overlooking things because, again, there's so much pressure.
Let me stop you there.
What?
You think he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year? Did you just make a prediction?
Hell yeah. I'll put my money on it right now.
You just sort of skimmed right over it. You just said it. You think he'll achieve it. That means you think he'll be Defensive Player of the Year. You're making that prediction.
I think Rudy's going to get roasted in Minnesota because, well, it's Minnesota, baby. I mean, it's just Karl Anthony Towns isn't that good a defender. I think he's going to be doing a lot more legwork than he had to do even in Utah. I think Marcus Smart is overrated.
He won't win it again.
As a defender. No, he can't. Like that was a once in a. It's like, hey, let's give it to a guard. Hey, we really like Boston's overall defense. Hey, you know what? Marcus Smart's been there a while. Let's give.
That's exactly what that was. That's exactly the calculus that went into it. The other guy would be Draymond Green. Does he stay healthy? You know, everything with him. Who knows?
So much broke well. Look. It's not like he's not going to be a top 10 defensive player because, well, that's who Draymond's always.
So
been.
Those are the two best defenders in the league. It's Draymond and it's Bam, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rudy Gobert is up there. Those are the top 3. But I'm with you. The Rudy Gobert thing with Minnesota. We'll see how that works out. There might be voters who feel for Bam and say, you know what, it's about time that he gets it. Like Rudy Gobert's won 3 or 4 times.
He wasn't even in the top 3. It was so egregious. And I know the understanding is, well, he didn't play enough games. Again, just 10 more games, 5 more games maybe would have been enough. Like it's just unbelievable. But aside from all that, we know how good he is defensively. I think everybody who's ever watched a Heat game knows how good he is defensively. It's the leap that I think he's going to take offensively. I really do think, you know what? He's going to take a leap. I'll go out on a limb again. Not just will he be a Defensive Player of the Year, he will be an all-NBA type player next season based on the fact that he's going to take a leap offensively. I think he's that
When
good.
you say a leap offensively, does that mean more shots or just better and more efficient?
Yes.
Both. Okay.
Yes. I think he recognizes that, he's verbalized it now, and he's got the skills. And I think, again, a full season of working together with Kyle Lowry is going to be able to unlock what he can do offensively. I think he's going to be featured there because he has to be. And I think working together with Tyler, it's going to be a hell of a duo. And I think we have to see Jimmy take a step back during the regular season just because it benefits him. And we know that he's your closer. Yeah. He's going to be the guy who steps up in big games. He's going to be the guy who wins you playoff series because of his overall strength and his ability. But he can't play the way he did against, the Sixers and the Celtics against, random teams, Sacramento in February.
Right, all season. Right, exactly.
Right. So you need to go through Bam.
Look, I hope you're right. It's one of the things I'm most excited to watch, like the first couple weeks of the season is, all right, Bam, it was a lot of talk about how you're going to take more shots and you're going to be more of a guy offensively and all this. What does it look like? And that's my big question. And I am excited to watch. To answer your initial question, what are we most excited to see? I really am. Like those first couple of weeks of the season, how does Bam's offensive game look different? Is it just more stuff at the rim? Because if it is, fine. That's good. That's great.
Absolutely.
I'm okay with that. Does he start taking threes? Does he bring London back to Miami and start taking threes? I don't know. I
don't think so.
Does he try the more post-up stuff? Does he try more mid-range stuff? I think. I'm really interested to see how his game evolves. And so I'm with you on that. I am.
Anything else? Quick hitter, maybe?
No, not really. I'm excited to see Jovic. Like he'll get limited minutes here and there, but he's the one new guy on the roster. So we'd be remiss not to mention him at least. I'm excited to see what he looks like in the NBA. I like his long term.
Kind of overlooking Haywood Highsmith.
Are we? The
A
Heat really
little
liked
bit.
him in summer league. We should mention that. Like, Miami
He's
really
a starter.
liked Haywood Highsmith.
He's your
He could
opening
be.
day starter. So
He
I
could be.
don't see. Yeah, I think it's an absolute possibility there. I mean, at this point, I got to say it might be a better option than Kayla. That's another thing too. Is I'm just excited about some of the lineups that we'll see off the bench because I think that's, well, you know what? That might be a conversation that we'll save for the next segment. Stay tuned as we talk about some of the other lineups that are worth noting and watching out for next season here on Locked On Heat. On Monday, August 1st, we are kicking off our 2006 NBA Finals rewatch. And Wes, I cannot wait to start this series. After 16 years, we're approaching this with both a new and a more nuanced perspective. So with that in mind, as just a little teaser, we're kicking off this segment with a quick rundown of what we're most interested in about the rewatch. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off? What are you most interested in when it comes to the 2006 NBA Finals rewatch?
So I already watched the beginning of Game 1 a little bit this afternoon because I had some time. And, I'm excited to put into context what the game looked like back then versus what it is now. I'm excited for all of that. I'm excited just to see really just peak Dwyane Wade. This is good. And I think a big part of our series is going to be, a big kind of pillar of it is going to be focused on the question of, all right, at what point does Dwyane Wade become a legend? Because that was his legend-making series, was in 2006, the first finals win for the Miami Heat organization. And when he put the team on his back and had some of the most legendary performances we've ever seen in the finals from anybody, for any team. And it was the stuff that made him a legend. And already kind of watching the game and listening to the broadcast, it was Mike Breen and Hubie Brown on the call. They're talking about Dwyane Wade, this young player who's taken the league by storm in the postseason, and boy, does he have a bright future, a star in the making. And just knowing, obviously, what we know now, they were right. But I don't know that they thought that they would be right so soon because he becomes that player during the finals, and so that's what I'm most excited to watch. Is Game 1, he was fine. The Heat lost Game 1 of that series. Spoiler alert. But as the series went on, he became a legend, right? And we really saw him blossom right in front of us. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, no, it was phenomenal. Like so much context with his development and the way that he was starting to be marketed and everything else like that. And the fact that Shaq specifically chose to come to Miami because of that pairing, the possibility of being able to mentor a young Wade and everything else like that. And then seeing him blossom over those first 2 seasons of Shaq's tenure and over. Look, we're talking about a player at the end of year 3, the equivalent is seeing, again, impossibly, ridiculously, seeing Tyler Herro score 40-something points in an NBA Finals game. It's like what he did, what Dwyane did was so historic, so great. And that's absolutely why he's one of the top 25 best players to ever wear a jersey in the NBA. Like, he is just that good. He's one of the all-time greats, and there's no denying that. Like, whatever happened
that game from the Mavericks team that won 60 games and was really, and Dirk was in the MVP that was a really, really good Mavericks team. And he just stole the series from them.
Yeah, the way they talk about, I'm getting too much into it. The way they talk about that Heat team, it's like, boy, they sure are lucky to be here. Like, it was just so obvious that this Heat team didn't really, I don't think that they belong there. Yeah, it was a great cast, a great group of talented players, et cetera, but I don't think anybody really expected them because of the turmoil of the early season and everything else. But I'm kind of looking at the flip side of that, the way Shaquille O'Neal's game changed to some degree my perspective on it, because so much of at that point in time as a fan watching and just thinking, why didn't he dominate more? Why did Zoe's minutes feel like they were more impactful and things of that sort? And like, I think we've kind of come to just diminish what Shaquille's role was during that finals team, and just seeing him, like you were just mentioning, the style of play, like every possession, dump it off to Shaq.
Yeah.
Every possession. Like, it's unbelievable. No fast break.
I want to see how much, and I know I made the same note. And I want to see how much that changes as the series goes on. Do they start going? I don't know. I don't remember like the X's and O's specifically that way. Do they start going through Shaq less as Dwyane Wade is taking off? That's going to be something interesting to watch.
Absolutely. So yeah, so much, and then all the
Started-
like all the different players and everything else
Yes.
that were able to chip in, like seeing Jay Will out there, seeing
Jay
Antoine
Will
shimmy
taking
his way.
those pull-up threes before they were like cool.
Yeah,
He created in the first 3 seconds of the shot clock, I'm just taking this three-pointer because nobody else is on me. I always loved Jay Will for that. I always loved watching Antoine Walker just chuck it up. It was so great. And yeah, it was just good memories. Can't wait to revisit it. It starts August 1st, Monday. We have game 1, our rewatch of that. So people can find those games if you have NBA League Pass. It's on NBA League Pass. Go find it and watch it with us. So watch it between now and Monday. Go ahead and watch the game, and you can kind of do it along with us. And that's what we're trying to encourage people to do.
absolutely. So what are some of the lineups
Yeah.
that you're most interested in from the 2022-23 version of the Miami Heat? Because again, we've talked about what's likely to be the starting lineup, either
Yeah.
Caleb or Haywood Highsmith alongside the other three, and probably Tyler Herro. Does that exclude the chances of Victor Oladipo starting at some point? And what other specific lineups do you think you might be interested in watching for?
Well, the starting lineup's definitely something to keep an eye on for obvious reasons. I do think that if Tyler Herro starts, that Victor Oladipo sort of backfills his spot as sixth man, and that makes a lot of sense for everybody involved. I'm also interested to see what the closing lineup is. We've talked a lot about what the starting lineup would look like because PJ Tucker's gone and with Tyler Herro saying that he wants to be a starter. But a lot of last season, we were trying to figure out what the best closing lineup was, and we haven't really had that conversation yet. And so I'm looking at what the closing lineup options would be. My guess right now is probably, you've got 3 guys pretty much cemented: Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. Those are your 3 vets. You put them in there. Tyler Herro led the team in fourth quarter minutes last year. He often was closing games. He was your closer.
Yeah.
I think he'll be part of that closing lineup. So the real question to me is, who's that 5th guy? We saw them go Victor Oladipo quite a bit in the playoffs, but also part of the playoffs was health issues, and they kind of had to go to Oladipo. I'll be interested to see if that's the case in the regular season. I think I've settled on Max Strus as probably the favorite for the 5th starter, just because of the fact that he spaces the floor for Jimmy and for Bam, obviously. And I think if you have Bam and Jimmy in your basically your small ball front court, and then you surround them with 3 shooters in Kyle Lowry, Tyler Herro, and Max Strus, guys who can legitimately space the floor. And we already read you the Tyler Herro numbers. Just copy and paste them almost basically for Max Strus. They're right there in the same vein, except for the pull up stuff, but the catch and shoot stuff is. And Lowry's an awesome 3-point shooter. So I think that's the optimum amount of spacing around Jimmy Butler. And when we're talking about a closing lineup in the end of a game, the offense is going to go through Jimmy Butler. And that's why I kind of went away from Victor Oladipo. Oladipo is best with the ball in his hands, not really a floor spacer at this point in his career. And so, if the ball is going to be in Jimmy Butler's hands anyway, I just think you want as much spacing around him as possible. And then you have Bam, obviously, there to back up the defense. So that's where I settled on the closing lineup. That's my best guess.
I can't. I just can't step away from the reality that Oladipo, again, you're bringing him back. You're kind of promising him these opportunities. And I think he's going to flourish in that 6-man role. And having said that, that kind of cuts into everybody else's ability to shine. And I think you're going to kind of rely on him at various points throughout the season to be your bucket getter, because he can get to the rim. He can draw fouls, etc. I have a hard time not envisioning him in that closing lineup. But you're right. I don't think anybody at the start of last season would have predicted that Max would be that guy, like that Max would be in closing lineup. So it's entirely possible. I just don't see anybody else capable of stepping up. It's really down to those 2. I think and maybe that's a lack of vision on our part, because again, there's always an X factor. Whenever we say zig, Spo finds a way to zag uncontrollably and unpredictably, and so that's something we have to take into consideration. So
yeah, I mean, Caleb Martin can just blossom with his new contract and just completely take off and be a 40% 3-point shooter. We have no idea. Like, stuff can happen, but based on what we know now, I do think it'll be Max, because I also think Victor Oladipo will get a lot of those opportunities during the game to shine and to carry the offense, specifically when Jimmy Butler is not in the game. And that was one of the other lineups I wanted to look at, is what's Miami's best non-Jimmy Butler lineup, And because Jimmy, toward the end of last year, before he started playing 48 minutes a game in the playoffs, he was starting to come out at the midway point of the first quarter. And then the Heat would kind of go small in those minutes. I actually think they're going to do the opposite. I think they're going to do the opposite because Jimmy Butler is their closest guy to sort of a physical four that they have on the roster, even though we both agree that he's not going to be playing the four. You don't want the wear and tear on him. But when he's not in the game, I think you can upsize maybe to having Bam at the four and have Dwyane Dedmon come in. He is your backup center.
That's what I'm looking
having Dwyane Dedmon come in as a center. Is that the one? So to fill out, like, what's the rest of that lineup look like if you've got Bam and Dedmon in your front court?
That's a tough one. Oladipo at the 2,
Yes,
I guess.
comes in
Gabe
for
at the
Butler.
1, and then probably Max or Duncan at the 3 spot. Likely Max at this point. I mean, unless Duncan has a tremendous training camp, which is something that is entirely possible. Like I just want to see what lineups he's best suited for, because you can't go from his salary to starting full time to completely unplayable, which is, unfortunately how it worked out for him late in last season. But they have to find some way of incorporating him there. Like if you're going to have the 2 bigs line up there, you have multiple screening actions that you could set at the top outside the paint. And there's some things that you can do to get him going offensively. And if you've got a creator, a shot creator, a playmaker like Oladipo out there, you can get him open looks. I don't know. Like, unless you're finding a way to trade Duncan, you can't afford to have him just rotting on the bench either.
No,
like,
if he's on the roster, he'll get minutes. He'll get minutes for sure. I think
How?
they'll be behind Max.
That's the thing. It's like, are you gonna play Max more than Duncan Robinson at this point? Like, I know he did it last year. Yeah, I mean, you're right, but that's kind of a tough pill to swallow there. I just don't understand. Like, if you want to shop him, then you got to play him, right? And if that's the case, then he's going to have to earn those minutes somehow. He's going to have to get those minutes over Max, because you feel confident that you saw the best of what Max can give you last season, that maybe he can continue to develop and grow off of that, and he'll get his opportunity if you find a potential taker for Duncan's contract. But having said that, like, what team is going to be like, yeah, we know he can shoot based on what he did 2 seasons ago? Like,
well,
I just don't.
I mean,
I don't know.
He shot well last year too, and he's a respected floor spacer, and that's even more important is the fact that just guys do close out on him. But look, I think that Duncan is probably your 11th or 12th guy, and so you're right on the fringe of being in the rotation. But I think if he's on the roster, Miami has to find minutes for him, if only just to keep his trade value from completely plummeting, if that's not or even happened yet. So. No, I think the non-Jimmy lineup will probably look something like Victor Oladipo, Max Strus or Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo, Dwyane Dedmon, and either Tyler Herro if you need him in there for shot making or in shot creation, or that's maybe some time to give Gabe Vincent some minutes and things like that too. So
because they're a believer in Gabe and they want him with the ball in his hands because of what he showed last season. So I think
we'll see a lot of different versions of that. I also wonder if we see versions of it where Duncan, he's a tall guy. Could he sort of be your faux 4 in a way?
Yes.
I wonder if there's minutes there for him to get, depending on
could he start
Caleb Martin and Haywood Highsmith. No.
Could he start yet?
No, he's not good enough defensively. Can't start. No. If Tyler Herro's starting,
he can't hold his own bigger players. Like, no, I it's fair. If he can find some way around that, I mean, maybe that's a big if, I guess, but I know there's a small movement about it from Heat fans, and I wonder, like, if you've got your built-in floor spacer there, he puts on a little weight, you're not asking him to chase guys around multiple screens, and he just goes against bigs. He can handle that rotation on times. Like, I mean, maybe against less mobile bigs. Could he be your next PJ Tucker type? I mean, that's kind of ludicrous, but it's
I understand where people come in with the initial logic is a lot of 4s in today's game just stand in the corner and take corner 3s. So just spot Duncan Robinson on him, and now you're not you're not chasing guys around all the time. However, what other teams will do is call up that guy to set a high screen and get the switch onto, and the guard will get switched onto Duncan Robinson, and now Duncan Robinson is in no man's land against a ball handler. And so that's the problem. Unless Duncan Robinson in training camp shows that he has taken steps defensively, which could happen. And maybe that's his future is at the 4 because the foot speed just isn't there. He just naturally doesn't have it, the lateral foot speed. So maybe if you were ever going to be an average defender, then it might be at something like more of a 4 spot where he's guarding slower players for a majority of the game. Maybe, I don't know. That's something that they could definitely take for a test spin in training camp. Why not? I wouldn't rule it out.
I can't
but I
wait
don't
to
think he
see
can start.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the numbers on Duncan Robinson's muscle watch this offseason. Like, we're going to hear it. Like, if we already started to hear that Tyler's put on, X amount of muscle, like Duncan's going to show him to camp 20 pounds of muscle heavier, I'm sure of it. Like, we'll start to hear those buzz.
I know we're running late on today's show, but can I throw one more lineup at you that I'm just excited to watch?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
Tyler Herro, Max Strus, Victor Oladipo, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo.
Okay.
That's the one I'm really excited. It's similar to the closing lineup, except instead of Lowry, you've got Oladipo. And what I'm interested to hear, what I'm interested about that lineup for is the fact that, okay, I do think Miami's best lineups will feature Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo as sort of your front court, surrounded by shooting. But if you have Herro and Strus and Oladipo, that allows Jimmy Butler to be sort of the lead playmaker there versus the closing lineup. Kyle Lowry's still going to be your primary ball handler. Here, in this situation, I think Jimmy Butler is the primary ball handler, and he's surrounded by shooting and Tyler Herro and Strus. I think Oladipo is going to have this training camp and full summer of work is going to really benefit him. I think he's going to come back better than he's looked in a very long time this next season.
Sure.
And if you have that version of Oladipo, he could still give you some playmaking. Obviously, defensively, he gives you stuff there. That's also what I like about it. Probably your most athletic lineup, right? Like your most just raw talented lineup. You're talking about a supremely talented player in Bam Adebayo, a guy who's made the most of his talent in Jimmy Butler and is obviously one of the best 12 players in the NBA. Tyler Herro, who was a lottery pick, Max Strus, who's underrated athletically, and then Victor Oladipo, who was a top 2 pick in the NBA draft and has all this athleticism just waiting to sort of reemerge. And so I like the idea of just having your best athletes on the floor at one time. And I think those are your best 5 athletes.
Better than Caleb?
Maybe Caleb, but I just don't really know where he fits in there. But that's fair. I just don't know where he fits in that lineup. But maybe you put Caleb in Oladipo's spot if Oladipo's 3-point shot doesn't come around. Or Max. But that's not enough shooting, I don't think. But again, you have to get but unless Caleb takes another leap with the 3-point shot. So
that's right. That's what we're hoping for.
Versions of that lineup is what I'm most interested to see.
All right. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. And of course, we'll look at this again throughout the rest of the offseason as training camp nears. We'll be there for Media Day. We'll have all the latest and greatest news. So make sure to stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you can continue to follow us through our 2006 NBA Finals rewatch. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. Make sure you make your second listen Locked on NBA to get all your daily updates in 30 minutes or less around the NBA. That's Locked on NBA. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.